Welcome to Strategy Simplified. In this episode, I'm reconnecting with someone I met years ago at a university training. Nicky has gone through an amazing career transition and is now on the side launching a consulting firm. We talk through some of the premises that she had, some of the ideas that she's tried, and help to unlock the future for her. If you are thinking about starting your own consulting firm, this might just be the episode for you. Hey, I'm Jenny Rae LaRue, the CEO of Management Consulted, and today we are being swept away in a podcast mic takeover. I met Nicky a couple of years ago when she was a student at one of the universities that we partner with, and we've stayed in touch, and recently she reached out with some questions that I just thought this is the perfect fit for what we do at Management Consulted. So today she's going to take over the mic. She's going to ask her burning questions, and we're going to do our best to answer those, not just for her, but for everyone who's listening. Nicky, the CEO of Oceans and Railroads Consulting, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to be here.
The mic is yours, so just dive right in. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me here. For anyone listening, again, Jenny and I met, I want to say it was about 4 years ago now. And Jenny gave a presentation I was in my MBA at the time, and I was incredibly inspired. And so reached out, we had a first podcast. And so it just seemed fitting for me to reach out again. Now that I'm kind of in the very, very early stages of starting my own business. So a little brief background on myself. I graduated with my law and MBA degree, and I am currently a lawyer in Canada. But I'm also very passionate about business and also very passionate about goal setting and goal achieving. So the premise to give, again, a little bit of background, the premise of my company is goal setting and goal achieving, and specifically targeted towards young adults, because I feel like, at least for myself, that was a stage of life where it really sort of sets the tone going forward. And it's a really great opportunity to figure out what you want in life, particularly career-wise. And so I'm just very passionate about goal setting. And I have many questions for Jenny today. So again, thank you for having me. And I'm ready to pick your brain if you're all right with that.
I'm so game. And also, we're excited to just get to know your company and your vision today. I hope that you're ready for some very direct feedback, because that's one of my hallmarks.
Absolutely. In fact, the more feedback, the better. It's both exciting and incredibly overwhelming and nervous. And so, yeah, I'm just ready to dive right in.
Love it. Let's go.
So I guess the first big question I have is, I wasn't naive when I started my business, in the sense that I know it's going to take work to get my name out there and you start to get clients and things like that. However, I guess I was a bit naive in maybe how hard that might be. And so I have set up a website, and I'm curious if you have tips and tricks on marketing your business when basically no one in the world knows about it other than yourself right now.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so the first thing that I just want to say is that starting businesses is hard, but starting services businesses are actually easier than other businesses, because you don't have to produce a line of product and then hope that somebody's going to sell it. And you can scale it very easily. And so your scale right now is tiny, and can and should be. Your job is actually not to market your business to everyone who doesn't know it. Your first job is to sell to people who know you. And when you begin to sell to people who know you, they know who you are and the kind of work that you can deliver. They're going to trust you with the project that they have. And so I'll just tell a little bit of a story from my background to give you some encouragement here. My first consulting business, I started when I was living in South Africa. And I moved to South Africa after traveling around the world. And I had the impression that I was going there to get a job. Everyone in my family had jobs. Everyone in my grandparents' generation were entrepreneurs, but I was not raised by, and was not in a culture of entrepreneurship. And when I thought of entrepreneurship, I thought of Facebook, right? Not a services business.
Yeah.
And but somebody gave me some of the most important career advice that I'd ever gotten. And this is how I started my first consulting business. And so this is my advice to everybody. He said, you're going to meet with people through your network. And you're going to ask people not to take a meeting with you because of the value that you provide, but because of who is creating the meeting for you. right? And so your job is actually not to try to market to strangers. Your job is to market to friends and friends of friends. That's your first
Mhm.
job in a services business. And then what they told me was that when you go into the meetings, don't ask them for a job, ask them for a problem to solve.
Mhm.
Have a conversation, a structured, clear conversation around the problems that they're having. Is it a growth problem? Is it a staffing problem? Is it a X, Y, or Z problem? And then let them know that you offer a solution for those type of problems. What I see the mistake is that other people have made, maybe you've even made this when people say, I've got a website first. I'm like, oh, come on. That's like step 17, honestly. Right? It maybe makes you feel legitimate. And it's mistakes. It's fine to have a website, but
Yeah.
people like I'm working with someone right now who doesn't have a website, and she actually asked me for business advice. And
Yeah.
she said, do I need a website? I said, do you need more business from your website? She said, no. I said, do people need to prove that you exist because of your website? She said, no. Like she
Mhm.
has a 100% referral business, and I don't know if she will ever need a website. She may operate for 50 years with no website. And so you don't need a website. You don't even need a service offering. What you need are relationships.
Mhm.
And you need to start to set up conversations with people to let them know that you're starting a business, what you're capable of, and you need to have a conversation about their problems. That was how I started my first consulting business in South Africa. I didn't get a job. I got 50 jobs actually, but they were micro jobs, problems that people couldn't solve inside their organizations. And I was able to help them on a contractual, short-term, limited and affordable basis solve those problems. And that really, for small consulting practices, is the magic of how you begin.
This is fascinating and raises so many questions because and it's perfect because uh what I'm trying to or the struggle I'm having is when I think about marketing, I was actually somewhat avoiding my friends and family and sort of going externally because I go, okay, these are the people I already know. I'm sort of differentiating myself between the I'm your friend versus I'm a consultant, and the people I'm going to meet with and consult and have these great sessions with are going to be strangers who kind of don't know who I am, and we can almost have like a fresh start with it. And
Uh-huh.
so when it came to my marketing strategy, that's also why, to be transparent, I've completely separated my marketing from my Instagram, for example, or my Facebook. And I've kept those a very personal space and instead went, okay, I'm going to reach out to my LinkedIn network because those will be more legitimate, we'll say, which is not the right word, but
Yeah,
you know what I'm
I know what you
saying?
mean. Well, and and
Yeah.
and like there is a sense that if your mom buys your cookies, like you might not have a cookie
Exactly.
business,
Exactly.
right? So,
Yeah.
but I don't think you should worry about that. What you're trying to do is build business. You're not, and you don't actually know when you start a business what people want from you. You
Mhm.
don't. And you don't know what they're willing to pay for. You know what you think that they should find value in, but I'll give you a great example of a failure that I had thinking that and then not succeeding with it. And that it was how instructive it was as a lesson for me. I management consulted. I didn't start. I actually bought it from somebody else who
Oh,
had the
that's right.
idea,
I remember
and
you
who built
mentioning
it.
that. Right.
But when I bought it, I had this like whole growth plan, right? I was like, this is what I'll do. Because
Mhm.
basically when you buy a business, you're like, I'll change everything and I'll make all these differences. So I had this genius idea because on almost every call that I had, people had questions about networking. So I was like, oh, I'm going to create a networking book and a networking course. And like
Yeah.
people are going to buy from me and it's going to be great, right? And I'm going to start the process earlier with people who want to get consulting jobs. So before it was like, I have a McKinsey interview tomorrow. I want to start working with people earlier.
Mhm.
Premise was right, product was wrong.
Mhm.
And so I like did this huge fanfare, big release of this networking course. And I think one person bought it out of like thousands on our email list, right? It was,
Mhm.
I mean, I'd worked for months and years on it. And I even gotten into a fight that led to me buying the business around the fact that this was like strategic and central and core. But there's a difference between what people ask for and what they're willing to pay for. And it actually doesn't matter whether it's a friend paying for it or whether it's a stranger paying for it. If somebody pays you for something, there's a conveyance of value. And so I wouldn't, what I would worry about is if you're trying to give your services away to friends and family, that isn't a
Right.
valid proof point. But if you are selling to friends and family and people inside your network, but more importantly, if you're asking for them to open a door for you to someone else to have a conversation with, and you're open to learning about the process and you say, my goal is 10 clients in the first year. I'm wondering if you might know somebody, not for me to sell to, just so I can have a meeting with them because I'm working on building my opportunity list and sharing about the vision that I have and figuring out if it's something that they would want. A lot of people will make a connection for you like that. And everything in that whole process from talking to somebody all the way through to the close is practice for when you do talk to strangers. So I would encourage you to use more of that inner circle.
Hey, Strategy Simplified. It's Japheth here, your producer, and I really quickly wanted to pop in to tell you about Black Belt. So if you're targeting a consulting role at a firm like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Deloitte, Oliver Wyman, Accenture, you name it, Black Belt is a structured case prep program that might be exactly what you need to push you over the hump and land that offer. So it is a structured case coaching program where you'll get one-on-one coaching from a former McKinsey, Bain, or BCG consultant. You'll also get a year of free access to our new community for exclusive employer info sessions, training, master classes, community support, and much more. Last but not least, you get unlimited digital materials to support your case prep progress. Oh, and by the way, over 80% of Black Belts who complete the program land a consulting role. That's pretty incredible. So we'd love to see you inside of Black Belt. Join at the link in the show notes. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Well, and again, I just appreciate so much you offering your time to talk about this with me, because this is exactly, what I thought would be perfect of first off gaining insight, but then also looking to the people that I consider role models who have already done these steps before me, because, kind of branching off into one of my other questions, but the psychology of starting a business is crazy. I consider myself quite a brave person, willing to take on risks and just, go for things. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh my goodness, what will my friends and families think of this business? Or, especially coming back to the
could be hindering you from talking to them and your desire to talk to strangers more
absolutely
than even a strategic initiative.
Absolutely. I would be so much more willing to walk up to a stranger on the street and say, hey, do you know of anyone who might be interested in a goal setting session versus me, posting something on my social media, because that is just people I've grown up with and know me perhaps in a different capacity than as a consultant. And that's scary.
The other thing that I think is really powerful, Nikki, that I would just encourage you to unlock, and again, to do this with friends and family, is your own personal testimony. Usually most businesses aren't based off of an idea, but off of an experience, the successful ones anyhow, right? And so for me at Management Consulted, a lot of what we do is based off of multiple stacked experiences. The first one was the experience of going through the application process and getting a job at Bain. But then the second one was the experience of getting trained at Bain and the challenges of doing that. And then the third one was leaving Bain and building services businesses on my own and recognizing the things that helped me and then amplifying those in your business. If you really focus on this didn't exist and I wanted it, that's different than it existed in this way and I made it better. I think a lot of people can relate to those kind of challenges. So if you say something like, I did a goal setting day or a goal setting hour or goal setting quiz when I started my MBA. And when I look back on my time there, I recognize that if I had had this session, I would have done the same idea, goal setting, but it would have been executed in a way that would have gotten me further along how I want it to go. So it got me here, and that's the message of what I'm sharing to you. But what I want to get you to is even further than that. And so like really thinking about the examples from your personal experience and then sharing those wins with people, right? That's why like weight loss MLMs are so powerful, because somebody who lost 50 pounds, everybody's like, how'd you do it? They're like, well, I've got this thing. Do you want to sign up as a person in my downline? It works so well because the personal experience really begins to speak. People don't really buy products, they buy promises. And so if you can explain how a promise of something that you've done has worked for you, then going along with you in that journey is going to be great.
We'll be right back after this quick break.
Have you ever heard a new digital trend and thought to yourself, okay, does this really matter? Asking the right questions helps you cut through the noise and get down to what matters most. I'm Jim Hertzfeld, host of the What If, So What podcast. where we discover what's possible with digital and figure out how to make it real by asking what if, so what, and most importantly, now what? Subscribe and listen, and together we can turn big ideas into tangible actions so you can get shit done.
Well, and that's the thing, is that I'm actually so passionate and fully believe in the service that I'm offering, not even for myself as a business person, but to actually genuinely help other people accomplish the things they want to. Because I come across so many people each day who have things they want to do and accomplish, but either feel like they can't, or don't have the resources, or, don't really know what steps they should take to get there. And I go, oh my goodness, let me help you. Like, that sounds amazing, because I know how much fulfillment I've gained in setting and achieving goals, particularly over the last decade, which is kind of when I became very focused on it and really conscious about it. And I look at early 20-year-olds in their first couple of years of university and think, absolutely, let's sit, let's chat, and let's figure out where you want to be in 5 years, in 10 years, and let's make it happen. Because again, in the subject to external factors or other things, a lot of the time you can make that happen, and I would love to help you get there. So it's cool being so passionate about something that you are wanting to provide to other people.
It's great. So you have a need and you have a website, but you don't have any clients. So how do you go get them?
That's exactly it. And it was extremely humbling and again, I knew it, when you put a website out there, I knew I wasn't going to be flocked by people. But I also didn't think that when I searched for it myself, I wouldn't actually even be able to find the website myself. I go,
yeah,
okay,
that's true stories right there.
It was very humbling. I went, oh my goodness, is there not someone out there who just happens to know that I've created a website and wants my services? And for anyone listening, no, that is not how it works.
Yep.
So
it doesn't.
No.
It doesn't. And there are things that people will share with a small group of people, and then it's compelling and interesting, and people sign up and they're like, yeah, this is something that I'd love to do. But let me ask you a question. Let's build it from management consultants' perspective right now. So you're a part of a group of people who are starting their own services business. We have a community of people who want to become paid staff consultants. That's a big portion of who we have. But I also work privately with a few people on a coaching basis that do these kinds of services. Would you be interested in, maybe not the one-on-one services, but in a community of people who are building a business like you are? Is that something 100%. That would be compelling for you?
100%.
And so let's think about how we would build that. Let's build it now. Why not?
Totally,
right?
Absolutely.
While we're on this call.
Absolutely. And so that actually raises a point. And when I went, okay, how am I going to market this? Obviously, the website was one. Obviously, well, I think it's beautiful, not super successful so far. But I did think, okay, I need to get creative here. If the boundary I've set for myself, at least initially, was, not my Instagram or Facebook, how do I reach people? And so some things that I have done is I've joined some alumni groups of universities that I attended, one Great. Being actually UCSB. So I joined that and reached out to different people. And so I think there's probably about 15 people, you being one of them, that I went through, hundreds and hundreds, and went, okay, you're an individual that I genuinely want to connect with and feel like you will give me very good insights. Yeah. But I also recognize that that's a lot of cold, like people don't necessarily want to be cold emailed.
Yeah.
So that's also an element. So I have tried a couple different things, but I would love to explore this with you.
Great. I think what you're talking about is, is effectively like in what order you do the steps. Right. And so again, I'll give you a bunch of free high level stuff today as we're talking, but I think that there's a growing demand for people who want to have a services business, a side hustle, maybe something that will be a main hustle. Maybe it will be the main hustle to start with, and would like to have a way to think about it. So I just at a high level want to break a few of these things down for you, but I'm kind of thinking as we're talking about this, like maybe this is something that more people would want to join. So if you're listening and that's you and you want to build something like this, I would just invite you to reach out to us. Maybe Nicky and I are going to help co-facilitate something
Totally.
that's a group like this. But Nikki, the first thing that most people start with last is you need a list of people to talk to. And so you started out with some of those. There are people that could be advisors, but you need people who are going to lead you to meetings with prospective clients, right? And so you need prospective clients and people that will lead you to those meetings. So that's the first place that I would start, is go and get pretty serious about setting up a pace for yourself about having the meetings with people. The second thing that you need is a conversation about someone's pain points, right? Most people don't buy based on aspiration. That's the challenge with goal setting. They buy based on pain. They feel frustrated that they haven't achieved a goal that they want to. They're not where they thought they would be. So you need like an investigative process when you're working with people on what their pain points are. And you need to set that up so that as you're having a conversation with them, at the end of it, it becomes very natural for them to say, well, like, you've added a lot of value in the questions that you've asked and in identifying these issues. Is there a way that you could help to solve them for me? And then the third thing that you need is a product offering. Now, here's the piece that a lot of people change. And by the way, the fourth is pricing. I'll talk about that in just a second. But if you don't have customers, it doesn't really matter, right, what you're selling. If you can't meet with them, then you can't get the richness of the insight of what they're looking for from you. If you don't offer them a product, if everything is bespoke, it can be really hard to hold on to. So starting with something and then letting them know we could customize it if you want to, you have to do that 100% of the time, right? You can't have people come to you and you can say, I'll design something for you. It doesn't work. It's hard for people to visualize. It's hard for them to take action on. So you can say, here's my standard program. If you want something different, let me know. But that has to be there. And you can change it. You can burn it down. You can never sell it, but you have to start with that. And then the fourth thing is that you need a price. And the price actually needs to be on the higher side when you're starting a business like this. That's counterintuitive for a lot of people. A lot of people think what I need is a low priced business offering, but what you are actually testing for is in a services business is a pretty slow sales cycle and a pretty low acceptance rate. And therefore you need to command a higher price for the people who do decide to work for you, and you need to deliver exceptional value for those people. And so I'm a big believer in premium pricing for startups in the space. Like it's a hill I'll die on, because a lot of people say, like, well, if I sell it for $100 then more people will buy it. It's like economic theory doesn't work in services businesses like this. It's counterintuitive, because people then look at that and they say, oh, you're going to only provide $100 worth of value, but you're going to make me do all this work and I have to set up meetings in my calendar. And, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. And so you're going to look at a price point of a minimum of $1,000 for anything that you're ever going to do. And your job is to get to your first 10 clients, and 10 clients could be $10,000, 10 clients could be $30,000. But you're going to set micro goals for yourself as you think about that. And so you need those things, right? You need a list of people. You need a first meeting, a plan, a pretty solid plan for that first meeting. You need a program, and then you need your pricing. And if you have those four things set up, then you need to focus a lot less on marketing and a lot more on selling, which is the
absolutely. Well, so first off, thank you so much. Like a lot of that was quite validating, because when it comes to the price point, I obviously wavered back and forth quite a bit, and there's obviously a large spectrum. But again, ultimately, it's the value I thought I was providing to individuals. And I will say, with me starting out and learning here, anyone who is listening, if you're interested in having a free session, I'm more than happy to offer that, both as a way to get my name out there, like we're discussing, but also I'm clearly very learning. And so this will be extremely helpful for me as well. So a little bit of both there. But you make some extremely good points in that my website can be as beautiful as I want it to be, but if no one's going to it, or I don't have any clients, it's a moot point and it doesn't really matter.
In fact, let me just change. You just gave the most generous, kind offer, and I'm going to tell you, don't do that.
Oh,
And I'll tell you
okay.
why. And this will be our second to last thing that we talk about. I know it seems like it's going fast, but we've come up on time. But
Yeah.
what you could say that's similar is you could say, I have 3 available slots for anybody who'd be interested in a goal setting session. I do the first one for free, and I'd love to talk to you about your goals. And I just want to let you know that after we do that, my program is $3,000.
Mm.
Right. So that you are like setting up the expectation because people buy for one of 2 reasons: scarcity and deadlines.
Mm.
Okay. And so if you say, come and work with me for free, you didn't provide either one.
Fair. Yep, that's true.
Deadlines can be artificial, but if you're on a podcast like mine, what you should say is, when you're listening to this podcast, until March 31st, or until like 30 days from the date of the podcast release, because we don't know, all the time when that's going to be, right? 30
Totally.
days after this podcast is released, I will conduct 3 free goal setting sessions, and I would love to meet with you. All of a sudden, you've done deadlines, you've done scarcity, and you've created a sense of value that didn't exist before, even though you're offering the same thing, which is a free session. So
Totally. And that's
anyhow,
extremely
hopefully you're
good.
open to receiving that coaching.
Well, as a lawyer, a deadline is also extremely important as well.
Yeah,
So I should have said, you're correct. For anyone listening to this, up until end of March, we'll say that offer stands.
Give them 30 days from whenever the podcast releases. Yeah. So look at the podcast release date. If you're within 30 days, you have the chance to get one of the 3 sessions, but you better write quickly.
It's not in perpetuity.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I should be cognizant of time here, but I mean, you've already provided me ample helpful information, and I think that is the point. The main takeaway is, I need to make those solid connections and focus more on meeting with people and really building my network in that capacity to come up with some solid leads. So I really appreciate that.
I just want to share maybe one last piece of advice as we close. You didn't ask for this, but I think you did by subjecting yourself to coming on the podcast today. When you're as an entrepreneur, there are a lot of the psychological things that you have to contend with. When you are in an established business, someone else has gone through the experience of failure on your behalf. That's part of what you get as an employee, is that they have figured out how they can fail so that they have to not waste money on employees that are failing, right? You're just doing the work that they need somebody to do, and somebody else either failed in history on your behalf or is failing currently on your behalf. Maybe a partner in a law firm is a good example of that. So as a consultant, I wasn't failing. Like I wasn't trying to prospect for new clients. I just was working on the clients that we had, and my failures were micro failures. It was kind of like, oh, we didn't find the data that I needed, or I didn't, but it wasn't like the client said no and I have no money, right? Like it wasn't those kind of feelings. So entrepreneurship is the same as the work that you've done. You've experienced micro failures. You've developed a lot of resilience that you probably don't know that you can tap into, but you just have to remind yourself that everything is amplified here. The stakes feel higher. It's much more personal for you. It feels like a personal indictment, especially when you don't want to go to friends and family because you're worried that they're going to say no. It feels like a personal indictment. But what you get in entrepreneurship is more than the promise of freedom and agency and impact. Like that stuff is all fine, but it's not what wakes me up in the morning.
Absolutely.
What you get are relationships, and relationships that are built on peer-to-peer interactions instead of staff to owner interactions, right? And so that's what you're looking for, because if you have richness in relationships, you cannot fail as an entrepreneur, because those relationships hold the key to every resource that you might need. They have, in your case, relationships. They might have resources like a web designer or a marketer or somebody who runs a mastermind program, right? Like people have access to things that you have never experienced until you begin to tap into them as an entrepreneur. And I just really want to encourage you not to quit and not to give up when you feel like all of those feelings are amplified. Your job is to tap into the relationships, and then you pivot when the relationships tell you to. If they tell you, Nikki, I'm not going to pay $1 for goal setting, I don't care at all about it, but for you to come in and do like a legal review of my business, like not from a lawyer's perspective, but from a risk perspective, like, would you consider that? Then all of a sudden you're like, well, absolutely. But where do you want to go for your goals? Okay. Oh, you want to sell?
Yeah.
Interesting. Maybe we need to create like a firm that actually builds a transaction process for you. Like all of a sudden you're at a different business and it
Totally.
came from the relationships that you were a part of. And so, so you are not at the place where you are trying to replicate sales, where you're getting on 10 sales calls and you're selling the same thing. You're at a place of active listening. And you're going to, but you can't active listen with an open hand. Like I said before, you can't go in and say, I have no program. Tell me what you need, right? You need to say, here's my program. How do you respond to that? Do you want to do it or do you want to do something else? If you don't want to do that, what do you want to do? And you're co-ideating with people inside your community. Those relationships are going to be the richest, most valuable insight for you. Just one quick story about that. Someone sat in my office 8 years ago and was like, you guys sell all these like, all these like services, but do you have a program? And I was like, what do you mean a program? Right. And they were like, well, like where you kind of walk from A to Z through the things that they need to do. And I was like, well, I tried that. I sold this networking course and nobody upgraded. They were like, no, not like an upgrade pathway, a program. Right. So lo and behold, one of our most active and used resources in our program, our now most popular program, Black Belt, which has driven revenues and
I
success.
just looking at that actually a bit.
Yeah, through our programs, so much through the last 8 years, is our networking course. So the one that I talked about at the beginning, that was the right idea, but nobody wanted to buy it. They actually wanted and needed, but they wanted in a bigger program. And so, so there are pieces of what you're going to discover along the way that are going to unlock significant both business and relationship value for you. You're going to find that these are really tremendous resources, but there's going to be other steps along the way. So just to encourage you, I told that story about my failure at the beginning, but there was a full circle moment years later when somebody else had an idea that I'd never thought about, but I wouldn't have had that idea on my own. That idea came through a relationship. And so will all of your best ideas.
Yeah. And failure is, I could have 10 more podcasts on the idea of failure alone, because I can equally say how important it is and how much it builds resilience. And, I failed my LSAT, or not failed, but I've experienced failure on a number of times. And I can appreciate how important it is and how much it builds you further, and also know that it can be very challenging to overcome. And so that's,
well, I don't think that you're very smart if you have an appetite for failure that is greater than an appetite for success, right? Failure has to be like a necessary piece of what you embrace. But I do think that how quickly you recover from failure is a determinant of your success. So, so I would say, don't worry as much about the things that you've been doing and focus. And then report back. Let us know how you're doing. And then if you want to kind of co-build a group of people that are doing something similar to you, let's talk offline.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. You've just been a really, really wonderful connection, helpful in so many ways over the last 4 years. And I am very grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Nicky.
Wonderful.
Thanks so much for listening to this amazing episode with Nicky Sellinger. We had an awesome time together. And if you came up with questions or have an interest in joining a cohort that's going to focus on building a consulting practice, please reach out. In addition, if you'd like to be on the podcast in the future, write us, team@managementconsulted.com. And of course, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment, and also make sure that you share it with friends. Thanks so much for joining.